Hello guys, it's been a while since I've made a video really talking to you about China in the global south. And as you can notice, today my background is quite different because I'm not at my usual spot. I'm actually even not in Mauritius. I'm in Europe. Since last week, I've been attending a series of conversation meeting around how the EU, European Union, is going to engage Africa in the critical mineral space. And I've been to Brussels, and also today in Germany. I'm going to be leaving Germany to go back to my tiny island of Mauritius. And this video is just really to give you a quick, not a quick takeaway, but a quick feeling that I got during this moment. And I had opportunity today to visit Berlin, to visit different spots of Berlin, and I even visited the Checkpoint Charlie, which is one of the border points that was separating um, West Berlin and East Berlin during the Cold War. That was where, people were crossing from both sides when they were wanted to check between the U.S. Berlin and the communist Berlin. It was really the separation wall where, the separation of the Cold War, the significance of that. And when I was walking in that street and when I saw that, it really got me thinking on the current circumstances and the current context we are finding ourselves in. It was Cold War. And ironically, I was finding myself in Germany talking about critical minerals, how the EU is going to engage with China. In the background now, we have that new Cold War context narrative coming back again. For years, we thought that it was over. We thought that we turned the page, that, things were different. But apparently, we are coming back to that Cold War mentality. And it just got me thinking when I was walking in those streets in Berlin, I was like, do we really need to go back to those times? Do we really need to go back in those period where two great power or two blocks are fighting over, they're really just not seeing eye to eye on things? I was like, didn't we learn something from history? Didn't we learn? I mean, didn't we get the lesson of really what's happening and what's happened in the past and how we came close to nuclear war, but it never happened? But didn't we really learn our lesson, right? Beyond critical minerals, I thought as well about the tension in Southeast Asia with China and its neighbor and the US presence in the region and all the tension around it. I also thought about the tension between the US and and Russia over Ukraine war and all that situation playing out. And I thought about all how the narrative of the Cold War really becoming really much more prominence these days when we talk about all the international system today, the current international system where everything and apparently everything is just leading us to talk about a new Cold War. Do we really want to go back there? Do we really want to go back into that time where, you know, uh, the world was really coming close to an end because we had superpower really ready to fight. I know people tell me, we are not there, we passed that time. We are not going to have that anymore. The new Cold War that we're having now, it's about critical minerals, it's about something else. It will never lead countries to that path. But are we really sure? Are we really sure when you listen, when you hear the rhetoric, coming from different capitals, Washington, Beijing, Paris, and elsewhere, Moscow, when you hear those rhetoric, you kind of wonder, you cannot really stop yourself by wondering if really, really we are really safe from a new Cold War. And this time, that Cold War may not be so cold that it was in the past. In the past, it was cold for great powers, but for satellites countries that was hovering around those great powers, it was quite hot wars because we saw wars happening in Africa, we saw coup happening in different parts of the world against the background of that tension of the Cold War. At this time, I don't know. I really don't know. I can't keep myself but wondering if really we shouldn't be dialing down a bit and learning from history and learning our lesson not to make the same mistake. Really correcting what needs to be correcting. That needs correcting, that's what needs to be corrected for us not to find ourselves in that circumstances. I know I sound a bit tired today. I'm a bit tired. I'm about to go back home. And yeah, I just wanted to share with you that reflection and that thinking of where we go from here. What do we need to do to avoid that situation? I understand that the international system is changing. I understand that the US might be worried, not might be, surely, certainly worried about the rise of a country like China becoming much more powerful and everything. I understand all of that. But when you look how they're reacting, when you look how the narrative has become so toxic, so problematic, so I wouldn't say violence, but become really worrisome that you really wonder if really we are not heading down to the path of a new Cold War. That might be bad this time. And walking the street of Germany, of Berlin today, I was like, you know, Europe have seen it firsthand. Germany, Berlin has seen it firsthand. Maybe, maybe, just maybe, because of what they've seen, what they've lived firsthand, maybe they should be wise enough to change their approach. Maybe they should be wise enough to dial down a bit. Maybe they should be wise enough to follow their own agenda, not to bandwagon behind another power. Maybe they should be smart enough to understand that, yeah, Cold War is not a funny game, is not really interesting to do or to make. Yes, I know. I'm not really making much of much sense. It's not really well thought of a process, but I just wanted to share with you my quick thinking that I was having while I was here in Europe, attending all those conferences, having all those meeting and talking with all those people, walking around, noticing many things. I noticed a lot of things though. Side notes, I've noticed that, EV cars are not really something here in Europe. I was in Brussels. I was in Brussels. I'm here in Germany, in Berlin. I didn't see that much of EVs charging station. And I was talking to people, say, no, here in Europe, we're much more in hybrids cars. EV is not really something that we have adopted yet. And I was telling them, there are some makers that are really making good EVs. I don't want to be advertising for anybody here, but just it was something it was worth mentioning that while being in Europe, talking about critical minerals that's used for EV industry, but in Europe, you don't really see EV car being something that people are using and they want to use. And maybe they're a bit skeptical a bit because the infrastructure is not there yet. But that's just a side note of it. But just to tell you that, I was just thinking, and I hope that the countries involved, I hope that the decision makers involved, I hope that in Washington, in Beijing, here in Berlin, in Paris, in London, that people will really, really, really pay attention and they would say, we shouldn't be going down to that path. We shouldn't be going down to the path of a new Cold War that may really turn bad this time. We were lucky the first time we didn't go into a nuclear war. Not sure that we're gonna be as much as lucky this time if we don't go into a nuclear war. That was just my thinking. So that was it for me. I'm gonna see you next week when we're gonna be back. I don't know. I think yes, I'm gonna be back, but in a new background as well. You're gonna have another story about that. But I'm gonna be back to my tiny island of Mauritius and to share with you another much well thought and deep reflection about China engagement in the global south. I know many people would say that it wasn't really about China. it was about China in a certain way, but not to the extent that I usually do that. So that's gonna be all for me. My name is Geraud Neema. I'm the Africa editor of the China Global South Project, an online media that covers China engagement in the Global South. And here we cover everything, we touch everything: geopolitics, infrastructure, investment, mining, you name it. We talk about all of the issues. And if it's your first time on this channel, I'd like you to click the subscribe button and also the notification. So the notification button, so every time we drop a new video, you are notified, you are aware of a new video that's coming up. We do that a lot. We share a lot of new content with the team. We have a large team coming from the Global South. We talk about those issues about China engagement in the Global South from the Global South with people in the Global South. And we'd really appreciate that you support us and you keep on following what we do. So that was all for me. I'm gonna see you in the coming days, either for another conversation on about China in the Global South. It's always going to be one of them. Either, as I say, either it was a solo conversation, either it was either for a podcast, either for a roundtable with my colleague Eric Olander and Cobus Van Staden, or either for another conversation in any shape or form about China engagement in the Global South. See you for another video of China in the Global South. Bye-bye.